I'm just recording in case someone on B day is absent. So I only have to record, or sorry, on A day, I only have to record on B day this week. All right. Away. Okay, so we have an individual prompt today. You're going to choose a poem that's like your poem for this unit. You're going to read it every class period that we study poetry. So for about a month, you're going to read this poem over and over again. And you're going to discover new things about it every time. So in your packet, you've got all these poems that are on the green pages. Those are the poems you can choose from. And I'm going to give you like 10 minutes here at the beginning, at least 10 minutes, to choose which poem you'd like. So look through them, decide which poem you like best. All of these would work for essays. I think, no, I haven't gotten essays on all of these. There are some still nobody has chosen, but they will all work. There are some essays that are shorter than others, and keep in mind you're going to have to write a 3 to 4 page paper on this. So if you choose, for example, Second Fig by Edna St. Vincent Millay, which I have had someone choose that one, you're going to have to write a 3 to 4 page paper on a 2-line poem, right? And that can be fun on its own, but it can be kind of difficult. So no reason to choose one that's like extra short just because you're like, well, I don't want to have to read the poem. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to give you time in class to keep reading the poem. So choose one that you actually do like the sound of and the feel of and the subject and all of that. All right, give you 10 minutes or so to do that. How many people have found their poem at this point? Ooh, good. Okay. Keep looking if you haven't. Once you've found it, it says up there, you're going to read it carefully and take notes on your first impressions. You can just write in your packet. I'm going to come around and see if shows them what else. Has everyone gotten a chance to actually read their poem through yet? Raise your hand if you've read it through at least once. Okay. All right. I think we're going to move on then. If you decide to change poems as you're reading it, if you're like, oh, I hate this now, just let me know. But the purpose is to read it a whole bunch. So it would need to be in the next few days that you choose to change it up so that you get that part of it. Okay. So in your poetry packets, in the very beginning, you've got some vocabulary words. There's a lot of them. They're blue pages, I think. And every day I'm going to give you a few of those vocabulary words so I don't overwhelm you. And we don't have to spend an entire day doing vocabulary. These are all words, though, that are going to be very useful to you when it comes to the AP test. They want you to be able to talk about poetry using these vocabulary words. It's really the only part of the test that's vocabulary based. They want you to be able, it's not like AP Lang where it's like, it's nice to be able to name the rhetorical strategies, but you could just talk around them. For poetry, they really want you to have the vocabulary, like be sort of adept at talking about the different formal qualities. So we're not going to move in order. Someday I will put these actually in order, but you're gonna flip to the third page, the fourth, I'm not sure. Find stanza. It's under form.
Oh, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6 pages in, okay. Okay, so we're going to be talking about these form words, stanza, and then the ones that are actually above it. So let's start with stanza, and you're just going to copy down the definition. It is a group of lines forming the basic, a group of lines forming the basic, recurring metrical unit in a poem. A group of lines forming the basic recurring metrical unit in a poem. You're going to be able to recognize them though just by groups of lines that are separated by a space. That's a stanza, right? But they're forming the recurring metrical unit in a poem, meaning that they are sort of like a unit in a poem. It's like calling it a paragraph, basically. And if there are multiple stanzas, then they're recurring. All right, now look at the one right above that, caesura. You know that word if you're familiar with music, right? Okay, so it is a break between words within a metrical line. Oh, yours are laid out differently than mine. I see. A break between words within a metrical line. Okay, for the example, I know this is annoying, we're gonna be flipping back and forth, but for the example, you're gonna find this is a photograph of me, the poem you wrote about for last night. The prompt. Crazy poem. We'll talk about it a little bit more in depth, I think, later today, but we're just gonna look at an example of caesura in this. So second to last stanza, it says, it is difficult to say where precisely or to say how large or small I am. The effect of water on light is a distortion. Okay, there's a caesura in there, a break in the middle of the line. Can you see where it is? It's in the middle of the line. Where does it seem like you would pause? Let's say, read it out loud. It is difficult to say where precisely, or to say how large or small I am. The effect of water on light is a distortion. So if you were to read that out loud and to actually follow the patterns of the sentence rather than the patterns of the lines, where would you take a breath and pause? Kil? After precisely. Yeah, exactly. That's a caesura. Caesuras can be periods, they could be commas, they could be dashes, but not all commas are caesuras because you have to see it as like the end of one thought or the end of one clause very clearly where you would take a break. So it is difficult to say where precisely, or to say how large or small I am. And I'm kind of exaggerating it there, but if you were to say that out loud, like not as a poem, you would also take a pause there. So caesura, pause in the middle of the line. Okay, let's do the next word. Yeah, so for example, write down, sorry, I forgot to tell you this. Write down that example, precisely, comma, or to say. Or you can write down the whole thing, whatever's going to help you remember that that's what a caesura is. I need to look at your packets. Oh, I didn't make one for myself. Do you guys have a line break on yours? Oh my gosh, it's going to be impossible to find. Maybe not. I mean, it's not necessarily one you need to write down, but let's talk about in a line break. Actually, let's do enjambment first, and I'll come back to that one. Enjambment, enjambment. You see it? Should be very close to caesura, I'm hoping. All right, cool. An enjambment is when, I'll read it instead of trying to freestyle. All right. The continuation of a sentence without a pause, a continuation of a sentence without a pause beyond the end of a line. Continuation of a sentence without a pause beyond the end of a line. All right, turn back to this photograph with me. There's also an enjambment in that same spot where I showed you. Okay, so this is again something that you kind of have to read out loud or read inside your head to see where it is actually enjambed. So it says, it is difficult to say where precisely. Right there, if I were to pause, it is difficult to say where precisely. Actually, that kind of works. Or to say how large or how small I am. The effect of water on light is a distortion. Do you see how that does not sound natural to speaking patterns? Poems are not always going to like stop at the end of the line and take this nice pause, and instead they might continue on in their thoughts. So you really would read this, it is difficult to say where precisely, or to say how large or small I am. The effect of water on light is a distortion. So there's all sorts of enjambment there. Which lines are enjambed? Yeah, Kill.
I feel like it would be effect of water on light is a distortion.
Absolutely, that is definitely enjambed. The effect of water on light is a distortion. Yeah, Jacob?
Where it says or to say how large or small I am.
Yeah, yes, that's also enjambment. Or to say how large or small I am. You see how you can't really pause after say, it continues on to that next line. And I think it's difficult to say where precisely actually does count too, though it's kind of, you could pause after where and it wouldn't be that awkward, so that one's like kind of iffy. But yeah, 2 instances of enjambment I got. All right, let's do the next one. Let's do end stopped lines. Opposite of enjambment. It is a line in verse, let's just say, a line which ends with the completion of a phrase or sentence. A line which ends, with a completion of a phrase or sentence. So when you would naturally pause in your speaking patterns at the end of the line, that's an end stopped line. Most poems have a lot of end stopped lines and maybe a few instances of enjambment and caesura. but not always. So go back to that stanza. There's 2 end stop lines. How large or small I am, colon, you would pause there, wouldn't you? If you were speaking it out loud, that's end stop. Where's the other end stop line? Yeah, the effect of water on light is a distortion. You would pause there before you said, but if you look long enough. Yeah, and I want to be clear about that because notice how there's no punctuation there. That doesn't mean it's not end stopped. Poets take all sorts of liberties with punctuation. Sometimes it makes no sense at all. So you just have to kind of hear how it sounds when you're actually speaking the lines. Kel?
Yeah, I've noticed in poetry that if it looks good and feels good, then it's good. Really.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't matter if it's grammatically correct. Yeah.
English if it was the way you want.
Right. English if you feel like it. Right. All right. So we don't have line break on there, but I want to show you line break. So line break, obviously, it's just like the break between lines, right? It's when you break off and you go to a next line. That's called the line break. But the reason that it's important to talk about is because when you are quoting poetry, you have to show the line breaks. So let's say I'm quoting that stanza. Usually, if you're quoting something more than 3 lines, you would actually indent and actually show what the poem looks like. But if you were only quoting 2 to 3 lines, you just embed it in your own prose and it would look like this. It is difficult to say where, and then you'll notice there's a line break there. So I would take a space. That's not actually, you don't put a dash, but you take a space, you'd put a dash, and you'd take another space and you would write it exactly as it is. So you want to make sure that you maintain all of the capital letters. Precisely what to say, space, dash, space, how large or small I am, colon. Let's say that's the end of my quotation. You wouldn't need the dash at the end if that's the end of my quotation. And then you would cite the line numbers. Sometimes those are written out for you. Here I'm going to have to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You count the spaces in between. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Actually, no, you don't count the spaces in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I don't write the word line. I just write 19 through 21. When it's a poem, people know that you're talking about lines. So I wanted to show you that. If you space between stanzas, so if you were to do on light is a distortion, and now there's this break in the stanza, you would do space, 2 dashes in a row, space, but if you look like that, and then whatever lines those are, 23, 24, something like that. Okay, when you write about poetry, which you'll be doing soon, both on the AP test and when you're writing about your own poem that you've chosen, this is how you have to cite it. And I'm looking to see that you've cited it the right way. So that's your warning, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Any questions so far about the vocab? All right, awesome. Then let's do an activity. I should have told you this ahead of time. We need our Chromebooks today, our computers. I know those take a minute to boot up, so get them booted. Yep. And then open up Canvas. And I'm going to publish the activity for us. Didn't want you doing it ahead of time. It's called Rilke Class Activity. Let me know when you got it. Just tell me. You got it? Okay.
kind of.
Oh, yes. Is the internet faster at all this year? I feel like it's a little bit better. No, okay.
Maybe in some places it works.
Oh, okay. Maybe because everyone has Chromebooks now.
Can I bring my personal computer? It blocks my map phone.
Yeah, the internet blocks are insane. They are so insane. They block everything.
They're getting more and more ridiculous. Like they unblocked cool math games, but then they'll block websites you actually.
They've been slowly adding more and more to the filter, and every time I email them and I say, hey, can we get access to this, and they say no, it's inappropriate. And then that's on staff internet too. So there's so much stuff on my internet that is blocked.
And the custom backgrounds.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, they blocked the backgrounds now. It's stupid Jordan District background.
It makes me so mad the way they do that. Like you can't Google search. I got them to take off the Google search, and I don't know if they put it back on for Moby Dick, but you can't Google search Dick Cheney still. So I'm like, okay, search Richard Cheney. If you look up Richard Cheney, then the right thing comes up and the Wikipedia page for Dick Cheney comes up, but they're just, I don't know, they're just.
I'm trying to look up tit birds. It was very upsetting.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm gonna look at some tits and.
Oh no. Well, I'm glad it was blocked. All right, are you guys up? Did you get into real quick class activity under today's module? Cindy's there. All right, so for this activity, as you can see in the instructions, I just gave you a block of text for this poem. This poem originally is in stanzas and lines, and I've just given you a block of it. So you are going to take some poetic license and you are going to put it yourself into stanzas and lines. And I want you to include at least one instance of caesura and at least one instance of enjambment. And other than that, you are free to express the thoughts in this poem the way that you want to. So you're just going to do that in a Google Doc. And when you are done, you're just going to submit that Google Doc. I'm not giving you all the time in the world for this. I think you can do it in 10 minutes. Okay.
Still a part of the
Okay, in this part of the activity, I just published the second part of the real activity. You are looking through how your poem compares to Rilke's. So his is in the packet, the real one, and you're going to look and you're going to see on the canvases, I'm going to say his is better. You're just looking to see what the differences are and why he might have chosen those differences to convey his meaning. So when I say better, it means that it was, I guess, purer to his original intention, obviously, and that structure is helping him achieve those original intentions. So since you're not here today to have that discussion, you're going to write your thoughts on this in your notes that you're taking for class that you're going to be submitting for participation points.
You're going to see you have just done steps 1, 2, and 3. And then you're on step 4. It says, look closely at 3 choices Rilke made with his structure. Find one example of enjambment, one example of caesura, and one example of an end stopped line. Then together in your group, so I only need one per group, you're going to create a Google Doc and write down those examples, and you're going to write how it contributes to the poetic quality and the meaning of the poem. So just follow these steps. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more to do these. You just need 3 separate examples and how the structure itself contributes to the poem. So just have one person create the Google Doc. Oh, let me say this though, don't delegate. Don't have one person do enjambment, one person do caesura, because I want you to actually learn how each of these things works. Sorry. It's more of a discussion than a get this done.
Oh, yeah, that's really good.
Now, I want to look at identification. It's actually the second poem in your packet.
You get those columns that are like some sort of weird boxes where it's like, oh wait, you know what, this person.
Oh, I think I just like those the best. I think it's like, I'm dark. This one is dark as well.
It's really it's sad.
You read identification? Yeah, it's really sad. Okay, you ready to be sad? I actually don't know how to pronounce her name. I think the Z is silent. I think it's Szymborska. Wisława Szymborska. It's a woman. Okay. Not that that matters.
Oh,
Here we go.
cool.
It's good you came, she says. You heard a plane crashed on Thursday? Well, so they came to see me about it. The story is he was on the passenger list. So what? He might have changed his mind. They gave me some pills so I wouldn't fall apart. Then they showed me, I don't know who, all black, burned except one hand, scrap of shirt, a watch, a wedding ring. I got furious. That can't be him. He wouldn't do that to me, look like that. The stores are bursting with those shirts. The watch is just a regular old watch. And our names on that ring, they're only the most ordinary names. It's good you came. Sit here beside me. He really was supposed to get back Thursday, but we've got so many Thursdays left this year. I'll put the kettle on for tea. I'll wash my hair. Then what? I'll try to wake up from all of this. Try to wake up from all this. It's good you came, since it was cold there and him just in some rubber sleeping bag. Him, I mean, you know, the unlucky man. I'll put the Thursday on, wash the tea, since our names are completely ordinary. It's so sad, right? Okay, so we've got a plane crash that has happened. We've got a woman. Actually, why don't you guys tell me what is the story here?
Yeah. Alright, so a woman gets visited by some random guys who want to talk about, not random guys, they're probably like the authorities who want to talk to her about this plane crash that so happened to happen on Thursday.
Uh-huh.
And this woman's like, oh, well, they're just showing me this picture of this random man who happens to wear the same clothes as my husband, happens to wear the same watch, and happens to have the wedding rings with the same names
Right.
as our names.
Right.
And and it's just like that can't possibly be.
Right. And at the end here, we kind of see her starting to like fall apart a little bit, trying to maintain that story. You know, she's like, I'll put the Thursday on, wash the tea, since our names are completely ordinary. Like, she obviously has some sort of knowledge that this is her husband that has died in the plane crash, right? But she's trying desperately to maintain that it is not. Okay, so there's some style choices I think that are very interesting here. The first one I want to look at is the enjambment in the first few lines. Where is the enjambment? Yeah, Sammy? Yeah, exactly. You would naturally not pause there. They came to see me about it. But when you have an enjambment like that, it kind of creates that pause, doesn't it? Like it's pausing in your eyes, even if you're not pausing in the way that you read it. And so it kind of has, enjambment's cool because it kind of has its cake and eats it too. It gets to have the pause and gets to claim that there's something significant coming up, but it also gets to create this streamlined thought that continues on to the next line. So why do you think that she chose to have this particular line? Well, so they came to see me about it as an enjambment. Let's talk first about then why about it should be on its own line. Yeah.
I don't know, it kind of emphasizes what the story's going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, the rest of the poem is about because, well, so they came to see me about it. Like, it would just sort of flow together and you'd be like, oh, okay, so they're going to talk about this thing. But about it really puts emphasis on it that there is more to this story.
Okay, so I think you've got your cake and you get to eat it too, you get to show what her thought process is. They came to see me about it as though it's just like no big deal, just trying to brush off that these men came and showed me some strange remains, or you get to actually see the unconscious part of her popping through. Like you get to see that there is actually a pause there and she is saying, "Ooh, I don't even want to name what this is about it," Audrey?
It's kind of like when it just says about it, goes about what,
Mm-hmm.
continues on to be like, asking the question, well, what happened?
Yes.
What are they talking about?
So it's almost like this prodding that the poem is doing, like saying, it's good you came. She keeps talking to some unseen, sort of unnamed visitor who has come. And she's like telling them the story of this identification process. And she repeats that it's good you came 3 times. So you really keep sort of seeing yourself as the person she is talking to. And through the poem, you kind of prod line by line. Okay, well, what did they came to see you? Oh, it was about it. All right, well, what was it? Oh, here's the story. Okay, but, and trying like to prod and get the truth out of her, or to get her to come to some kind of realization. Jacob, you were going to say something about why it's on one line.
I was just gonna say, I feel like about it, I mean, by using the word it's like, it could mean almost anything. And like, it's almost her denying like it actually happened.
Yes, about it. She won't say what it is. She won't even say they came to see me about the body or a strange person's body, or they came to see me about the plane crash. She just leaves it plain, like she leaves it so vague about it. Look at the title of this poem. All right, what kinds of identification are happening in the poem? There's multiple kinds. The first one might be the surface level one. What kind of identification is like actually in the plot? Audrey?
The identification of
Yeah, exactly. So why do we make people do this? We do. We make people, if there is a dead body and it's under, suspicious circumstances, or violent circumstances at all, we make the person who is close to that dead body, we make someone come and identify who that person is. Say, yes, that is my brother, that is my wife. We make them do that. Why? We have DNA. Yeah, Sam.
Kind of forces us to do this person is dead, that specifically happened. Your wife is dead.
Okay, good. So it gives a kind of like visual proof to it, right? And says like it's acknowledgement of the reality of this death then. That it's an acknowledgement not just for the state who is having you do that for like, paperwork purposes and to make sure, yes, this is who this person is, but it's also an acknowledgement to the person who is doing the identification to say like, you don't just have to trust authority on this. Like here is the real physical thing that you can see. There's also, though, an identification of something else in here. There's an identification of her loss, right? And this poem keeps skirting around that identification. We know it. We know it very clearly. Did anyone not pick up on why this poem was sad? Like, we know it as we read it. We're figuring out like, oh my gosh, no, of course it's your husband. Like, okay, yeah, shirts could be a coincidence. Watch could even be a coincidence. But wedding ring with your names on it combined with shirt and watch, that is undeniable. That is your husband, right? So we are understanding this is a loss, but she will not understand this identification of the loss. She's not going to identify her own emotions in this moment. So what happens when she doesn't identify the emotions by the end of this? Yeah, Kill.
We get a sort of sense of like grief, like the 5 stages of grief, and this is the first stage.
Yes.
Denial.
Yes.
And I'm certain that if the poem were any longer, we would go through all of those stages, and it would just be sort of like the bargaining. We can sort of see that here, where she's like, can't possibly be my husband because he probably changed his mind, or there's so many Thursdays this year. She's kind of like, he'll definitely come.
Yes, exactly. So it's like this way that she is kind of like in these first processes. So we know that there's like way more grief to come. In fact, she's not even like really grieving yet. Yeah, Audrey.
It's also like she's trying to fool herself into thinking that, oh yeah, everything's fine. And slowly you can't live in an illusion forever. And it's kind of like, it's breaking down at the end where it's like, it can't be fake and happy forever.
Yes, I love this. She's telling herself a story in her mind, right? And she's telling it because there is a visitor with her. She's telling it through actually out loud, not just through her mind. She's telling the story, but the story isn't enough to maintain the fiction or the illusion. And by the end, the story itself, the language itself is becoming confused and dissolving and falling apart. And we kind of get this idea that she's probably going to go into that next stage soon, maybe anger or whatever it is. It does sound like anger's starting to pop through when she says, he would never do this to me. You know, that kind of like selfish attitude towards death that happens right at the beginning. Sammy?
I think also the repetition of an answer to the order. It is an ordinary Polish name,
Yeah.
but
Wisława?
Yeah.
Yes, but we don't want to confuse the author with the actual person, the narrator, right? Because Wisława Szymborska, I believe her husband outlived her. So I'm pretty sure. So it's like a character, right? So back to About It really quick. I know I just have a minute. It makes sense then to put the thing on one line, the vague quality that is the like lack of identification, the thing that this poem is resisting so much, which is like identifying what that actual loss is on a single line, and says we're going to identify it as about it. This poem is about it. All right. I think we're talking about meter next. I will double check, but we start to get into like the rhythms of the poem. So your homework will be about that. And we are done.